Okay, welcome to this week's office hours. We only had one emailed in question asked, and no one asked in the office hours forum, so it's fairly simple. And then I looked at the homework and realized, for the most part, what people are having problems with in the homework from topic 2 that I haven't covered was calculating labor force data and information. So the question that someone had problem with looks somewhat like this. Some of you probably had this problem. All of you had this problem, but you had different data, right? So the homework system will change up the data so you don't have the same numbers for your problems. So first thing up is the age and the number of people. That's really telling us our population information. Next up is the number of hours worked, 1 through 10 hours, 11 through 25, 26 plus hours a week, and the number of people. And then the final data was the activity of those not in the labor force. And so these are people who sought work within 2 weeks, sought work over a 2 to 4 week period. We're still looking for work from 4 to 6 weeks. And then everyone else is considered, and this is an anomaly and, kind of breaks with what you guys might view as reality. But if you haven't found a job in 6 weeks, even if you're looking, the labor department says you're not really looking. So let's just start with the easy things. First off, the question is, what's the number of unemployed people? So the best way to do the number of unemployed people is to really look at the activity of people who are not in the labor force, right? Or sorry, they're not permanently out of the labor force. So we're looking for people who are searching for work, because by definition, whether you're unemployed according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is where a lot of you probably got fouled up and had difficulty, is you didn't know what data to look for, but you go to the definition of unemployment in the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. I believe it's also in the primer. The definition is you're unemployed if you were working, you lose your job, and you're actively trying to find a job. And you're not in one of our barred categories. You're not in prison, you're not in an institution, you're not in a hospital, which, by the way, if you're in any of those things, you can't be looking for work. The key thing that most of you didn't know or didn't check on was 2 to 4 weeks, or sorry, 4 weeks. So if you've been looking for less than 4 weeks, then you are unemployed. If you've been looking for more than 2 weeks, then guess what? You are not in labor force. So what we want to add to get the number of employed people, it's fairly simple, is we want to take 3.4 plus 1.72. And this is going to give us 5.12, and we round to 1 decimal point, so that's 5.1 is the unemployment number. So this isn't too difficult. It's really just knowing how to apply the definitions. If you're looking for work and you've been looking for 4 weeks or less, you're unemployed. If you're looking for more than 4 weeks, you're in these two categories, then you're not in the labor force. Now, to get to the number in the labor force, a lot of you probably did this right, but you didn't do this right, so it's hard. But it's anyone, so you're considered employed if you work 1 or more hours for a private employer or 15 or more hours for a family employer. This is simple simplification. Everyone's presumed to work for an employer, so everyone in this grouping is what we call employed. So what we want to do is labor force equals unemployed plus employed. So we have the number of unemployed from above, so we can put in 5.12 plus 1.6 plus 2.8 plus 13.19. And if we add all of that together, then let's just think, what's this going to be? It'll be 9. If my math is correct, it'll be 5.12 plus 17.59. That will equal that should equal 22.71. We round to the 1 decimal point. Then your answer that you fill in up top will be 22.7. if these are your numbers, right? And we get that by adding up the number of unemployed right here and adding in the number of employed. Now we're asked to get an unemployment rate. Unemployment rate, once again, where you guys probably went wrong is just not knowing how to calculate unemployed, but unemployment rate equals unemployed divided by labor force multiplied by 100 to turn it into a percentage. Okay, if we plug in our numbers, we end up with 5.1 over 22.71 times 100. And if I did my math correct, then we're looking at a unemployment rate of 22.5% when we round to one decimal place. Labor force participation is going to be equal to labor force participation rate equal to labor force divided by adult population. Adults are, according to government, over 16. So we've got this, so we add up all of this data, and this is where you might have gone wrong, is doing the adult population times 100. So if we add that up, then we get labor force, which we have here, 22.71 divided by, and we need to check this, so it's going to be, let's see, 2035.9. If we add up those three numbers, and if I'm correct, then we get labor force participation rate of 63.3% when I did the math. So that simplistically is how you do these problems, right? This isn't really rocket science. I think most of you, when I went in and looked, it seemed like most of you got these numbers wrong when you had done, well, you got it wrong purely because you just, two things. One is, once again, not knowing that if you're looking for work for more than 4 weeks, you're not unemployed anymore, and not knowing that the adult population is over 16, right? And that's where you went wrong. When I look at the other two problems on the unemployment homework where people went wrong, and I'm going to flip you to that screen share. So you guys see what I can see. This inside sapling, this is another problem people got wrong a lot of time. And this is more data. It's going to say what's the total labor force that's going to be employed plus unemployed. What's labor force participation? Well, you guys know how to do that. It's labor force divided by population. So this is everyone in the population. And once again, for 2 decimal points this time. What's the unemployment rate? Number of unemployed, they give that to you, divided by the labor force, which you calculate here. Then it says, suppose 276 people have been unemployed for so long they stopped looking for work. What's the new labor force? So if you were unemployed and 276 people that used to be unemployed have been not employed for so long they stopped looking for work, we need to subtract that from here and rerun all of our data. So it's a fairly simple problem, same as the last one, so hopefully you guys can get that right with just some of the examples. The calculations aren't that difficult on this. And then the last one's a similar problem as well. What size labor force, which is just adding employed and unemployed. How many people are out of the labor force, then you can calculate that by the adults minus the labor force, and then what's your unemployment rate? Unemployed divided by labor force that you calculate here. And what's the labor force participation rate? That's going to be labor force divided by adult population. So those shouldn't have been too hard. In fact, those last two, I'm not exactly certain why people were overwhelmingly, I mean, as you guys can see, people were just not getting those two correct. By a larger margin, they weren't getting this one. So some of it might go back to people were so frustrated that they just didn't do it. I don't know, but they just, you know, had a hard time. So I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, so hopefully that helps you guys out. Then if we go over here, we can look at the other two problem sets, and I think those were more or less we've addressed last week. But let's take a quick look and see. Yeah, so we calculate the marginal propensity to consume. We can look at that one real quick. Okay, so the graph below represents consumption C as a function of disposable income. Assume the consumption function is linear. What's the value of the marginal propensity to consume? All you have to do to calculate this is to pick 2 points and do the point slope formula, calculate the rate of slope of the line, because the slope of the curve is what's marginal propensity to consume. I always like to choose something easy, so I would say choose this as your point where it crosses and it's clear, and then choose this, and you can calculate the rate of slope from here to here. So you're going from 300 to 600 while you go, which is a doubling, while going from 150 to 600, which is a quadrupling. So 2 or 4, I think that's going to be 0.5 just off top of my head, but I could be wrong. Let's see, give up the view solution. And by the way, once these are passed, you guys can go through and check your solutions and see what's going on. So it's 0.67, so it's a little off, but not too bad for doing it off the top of my head. And so what you can see, change in consumption divided by change in disposable income. We end up with 600 minus 300, so 300 over 600 minus 150, 450. 300 over 450 is 0.67. So anyway, it is what it is, but what we're really saying is for every dollar you spend, 0.67 is gone. So let's go back and kind of close this out. Okay, stop sharing. And you guys see me again. So as I said, this week's video is going to be a quick video. No one really asked questions. I do want to point out the topic 3 information was posted. This is a challenging section. I'm assuming a lot of you are going to have questions, so hopefully you ask those questions in the office hour forum. I'll put together a video based on your questions to see what you guys need. Also, I'd like, if I get a chance to, it's going to be a little difficult this weekend or week because I'll be out of town on Monday and Tuesday. I'll be responding to emails for you guys, but I'm taking some vacation days, take my kid down to look at some colleges on Monday and Tuesday. But hopefully next week when I get back, I'll have the time. I can post up a video that really kind of puts together the Keynesian cross model, the multipliers, the production possibility frontier model, the circular flow model, all of these models together to kind of help you out with this section. The PowerPoints are pretty good on this section, especially how the government's involved in the economy. But the way to think about this section of class is this is the theory. So we did the first week, week was production possibility frontiers, opportunity costs. That's stuff that's not just a part of macroeconomics, part of microeconomics too. I try to give it a macro focus. The next couple weeks are when we're doing GDP, unemployment, inflation. All of that stuff is, to be honest, just straight measurements. It's economic activity. It's very real world concern. By the way, very newly introduced in the 1930s by Sir John Maynard Keynes. Prior to the Great Depression, we didn't know how to measure unemployment. We had never really thought about it. Coming out of Great Depression, we started measuring things. And then Keynes looks to describe how the economy works. So we've got our first intro model. Then we're going to bounce back to fiscal and monetary policy and what banks do. And you guys have done a little bit with what banks do in the money and banking section, but we'll expand that out into our theoretic model. And then so that's going to be a very applied section again, and then we're going to close out the semester, this quick semester, with a discussion of linking it all back to theory again. So we go general material, applied practical material theory, applied practical material theory. So we're going to flip back and forth, and some of these theories, all of these theories overlap actually. So try to put together kind of a unified theory of economics video for y'all so that you can see what's going on. Anyway, have a good day. Please ask questions in office hours forum. Give me something to do. Please send emails. Let me know what's going on. I'll talk to you all later. Thanks. Bye.